but it was right along that it was kind of parallel with the part of the bullpen where it juts back towards center field.
Sure.
And unfortunately for Judge, the ball was high, so it gave Bradley a chance to get under it, and he wound up going over that fence to his left, and he made a great catch. I'll give him all the credit in the world. I wasn't happy about it, but he made a great catch. But the fact of the matter is, even if that ball is a home run, it's still 3-2 Red Sox.
Yeah.
So it's not like he saved the game or anything, but obviously it changes the complexion of the game, but the Yankees are still trailing if that ball goes into the bullpen as opposed to Bradley's glove.
We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to From the Press Box right here on 90.3 WHPC. We're going to be talking to Hal Bock about his book called Banned, Baseball's Blacklist of All-Stars and Also-Rans. And we'll be back right after this.
Okay.
Yo.
Tell your friends about the Nassau Morning Madhouse. Hear what you're missing.
Check it out.
Check it out.
If you could add anything to make a fidget spinner even more useless, what would it be?
I'm going to go with a strobe light.
A strobe light?
They have that already.
How about something in the middle, like to maybe keep a snack, your medication, whatever.
Your medication.
A little compartment.
A fidget spinner for Grandma.
For Grandma, yes.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
She's got to spin it, though, to get the medication.
Every day's a new spinner.
The arthritis is acting up. No medication for Grandma.
Oh, my God.
The Nassau Morning Madhouse. Weekday mornings at 9. Yeah. On the voice of Nassau Community College.
90.3 WHPC.
Frank Sinatra.
Bing Crosby.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Dean Martin.
Hey guys, what are you doing?
We're making a list of artists you don't hear on the radio anymore.
Wait, I know where you can hear all of them and more.
Where?
Right here on Standard Serenade. Join me, Glenn DeMilt, for 2 hours of great songs by the great stars. Saturday afternoon at 6 on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Shake off the realities of the day, broaden your musical horizons, and embrace the diversity every Monday afternoon at 5 on Revelations on 90.3 WHPC. The show offers a potently unique collection of music with an emphasis on themes and rock rarities, an occasional tour de force of blues and soul, mixed with compelling sets of folk and folk rock. I'm Steve Kay, and I've got the perfect soundtrack for your drive home every Monday afternoon at 5 on Revelations, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Welcome back to From the Press Box right here on WHPC. By the way, this show is part of the WHPC Sports Network. You have From the Press Box on Mondays. You have Sports Talk on Thursdays, 9 to 11. Beyond the Game Fridays from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And we have another sports show on Tuesdays from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. So a lot of sports to...
Quality programming.
Quality programming. Get to talk sports. On the phone with us, we had him on back in October, talk about his book about the Chicago Cubs. But he's back with another book, legendary sports writer Hal Bock. Hal, welcome back to From the Press Box.
Good morning, guys. Good to be with you.
And Hal has a new book out called Banned, Baseball's Blacklist of All-Stars and Also-Rans. And is this published by the Associated Press? Are they the publishers of this one?
It's published in coordination with the Associated Press. It's Diversion Books, which has a deal with the AP. So it's a co-publishers, I guess you could call it.
And we should say that Hal Bock has covered, Timmy's very impressed, and I'm very impressed with this too, 30 World Series and 30 Super Bowls. That's pretty damn impressive.
It's a lot of games.
I would love to see a collection of those articles in a book. Maybe that could be your next book. That would be a great little collection of, like a time machine going back in time to see what was going on a daily basis.
We were just off the air. We were talking for a first minute about Bob Wolff, and I saw a quote from Bob today about in his obituary in the Post that said that between all of the games that he's seen, he estimated that he had been standing for a week worth of national anthems.
That's a pretty good line.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hal,
Bob.
you're probably similar.
Well, I worked with Bob. Actually, the first book I ever worked on was a book called Andy Bathgate's Hockey Secrets by Bob Wolff, and that was back in the 60s when he was doing the broadcast for the New York Rangers. And I worked with him on that book, and let me tell you, this is one of the nicest, most quality people you could meet in this business. Just a true gentleman, and he worked forever, and you know, a wonderful guy. Just a wonderful guy.
You get to know everyone in the booth after a while, don't you? You know, when you're there every day covering teams and stuff.
Oh, sure.
So, what made you write this book about band? It's basically about baseball. I mean, other sports have had band characters too, but what made you write this book about baseball and band people?
Well, I was reading an account of the Chicago Black Sox, the 8 Men Out, the great book 8 Men Out, about the Black Sox scandal in 1919 when they fixed the World Series. And I thought to myself, well, they couldn't have been the only ones who got in hot water. And, of course, we know about Pete Rose. There must be others. So I started to do a little research and discovered that people have been banned from baseball as early as 1876 when the National League was formed. So, I mean, it's a continuing saga. In the early days, it had to do with bribing players to fix games, like the Black Sox. Later on, as we all know, it's had to do with steroids and betting on games, as Pete Rose did. So it's just a continuing saga, and we've had players banned this season. Sterling Marte of the Pittsburgh Pirates, one of the better players, is sitting out a 50-game suspension for banned substance, and the great second baseman for the Florida Marlins, D. Gordon, who was the batting champion. He was the batting champion. He signed a $50 million contract and wound up sitting out the first 50 games of last season because he had used a banned substance. So this is a continuing story. It'll go on and on.
You mentioned in the book that it seems that the National League was formed because the previous league before it, the National Association, seemed to have a lot of problems with gambling. Almost, it was almost like it was the games weren't legitimate.
They were almost like an outlaw league. I mean, it was clear that there was going to have to be something done if baseball was to survive, and that happened with the creation of the National League and the Chicago Cubs. The owner of the Chicago Cubs was the first president of the National League, and he was William Holbert was his name, and he was determined to have a clean league. There were going to be rules and regulations, no betting, no fooling around, no smoking, all of this stuff. And, of course, that lasted for about a month and a half. The Louisville Colonels were a team in that league, and they were in first place. And they went on a road trip and suddenly started losing all their games. And suspicion, a lot of suspicion arose about that. And it was determined that 4 of them were fixing games, taking bribes. And the reason for that is that they were making no money. I mean, the salaries were abysmally low. The owners were not being very generous with their salaries. So the players were vulnerable, and if you offered them money, why, that's a good idea. I think we'll take it. So that's how it all started in 1876, and it's gone on ever since.
In one way or another. In the book, you actually spend a big chunk of the book, well, not a big chunk, but a nice chunk of the book about the Black Sox. We've all seen 8 Men Out or read the book. How much did this affect baseball? Did baseball almost disappear after this? The
way it affected baseball was Judge Landis was hired to be the first commissioner, and he was a cutthroat. I mean, he banned everybody, anybody who had any suspicious activity, and not even suspicious activity. One of my favorite stories in the book is about a pitcher on the Black Sox team. He was a rookie, named Dickie Kerr. Now, the Black Sox are fixing the World Series. Dickie Kerr won 2 games in that World Series, so he obviously was not implicated in the fix. And the next year or two, he pitched for the White Sox, and he demanded more money. He held out. And as far as Judge Landis was concerned, well, if you held out, that was enough to get you banned from baseball. So he threw Dickie Kerr out of the game. And Dickie Kerr came back maybe 3 or 4 years later. He was reinstated. But he never won another Major League game, and he wound up being a coach. And he coached minor league baseball for many, many years,
right,
including in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. And he had a team down in Florida. They had a pretty good left-handed pitcher who fell fielding a bunt and fell on his shoulder.
Wow.
And dislocated his shoulder. And in those days, in the 40s, they didn't really have the kind of medical treatment for athletes that they have today. So this player's pitching career came to a screeching halt, and he was ready to give up baseball. And Dickie Kerr said, you're a pretty good hitter. Why don't you try the outfield? And that's how the career of Stan Musial began.
There you go. So
that's one of my favorite stories in the book because, it's a tangled web we weave, and strange things happen in baseball, and that's one of them.
And also Judge Landis, if I'm not mistaken, was kind of a racist.
Oh, yeah,
and,
without question.
And basically prevented integration of baseball until he left in, 1944, I believe it was?
Well, what happened, he died in 1945, I think.
Okay.
But what happened was that Bill Veeck, who was a great innovator, wanted to buy a team, the Philadelphia Phillies, who were in financial difficulty. He wanted to buy that team and stock that team with players from the Negro Leagues. And there were some great players, as we both know.
Sure,
very true.
And Judge Landis said, "No way, that's not going to happen." And of course, he kept baseball racially restricted until he died. And Happy Chandler, a lot of people make fun of Happy Chandler, but Chandler was a very important part of the integration of baseball with Jackie Robinson, approving the Jackie Robinson. And Chandler also banned players. At that time, we talked before about the salaries. There were organizers of the Mexican League who wanted to challenge Major League Baseball, and they figured the best way to do it would be to get Major League players to jump to Mexico. And they got several players. Max Lanier, a great pitcher for the Cardinals, went. One of my favorite players, Sal Magley, great pitcher for the Giants, went.
Right.
And so on. There were maybe 20 or so players. Mickey Owen, the catcher for the Dodgers, famous for the passed ball in the 1941 World Series, he jumped to the Mexican League. And Commissioner Chandler banned all of them. You're banned from baseball. You will not play in Major League Baseball. Well, eventually the Mexican League started to have some issues, and the players wanted to come back to the United States, and one by one they did. But that's another chapter in my book called The Mexican Jumping Beans.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's all kinds of issues that have come up over the years that have caused players to cross the commissioner, and the commissioner would ban them. Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays were banned. I mean, how can you ban Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays? Those are the two of the icons of our game. But they were banned. They took jobs working for casinos in Atlantic City after they were out of baseball. And what were they doing? They were shaking hands and playing golf with customers.
Well, the thing
that suspension to me, when it happened, seemed like one of the most ridiculous decisions. I don't want to say ever made in baseball, because we all know there have been some really ridiculous decisions in baseball. But
don't get me started.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure. But you're talking about guys who they aren't playing anymore. They have no impact on anything going on in the field, and they took a job with casinos because they needed to make a living. Because not unlike today, where, I mean, let's face it, a mediocre second baseman just has to play 5 years and he's pretty much set for life. But Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays, their biggest salaries were in the $100,000 or $150,000 range. They needed jobs.